Shodhanandana brajajana ranjana Shodhanandana brajajana ranjana Munatira vanachare Munatira vanachare Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihare Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihare Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Giri Varadhari Jayo Giri Varadhari Shodhanandana brajajana ranjana Shodhanandana brajajana ranjana Yamunatira vanachare Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihare Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna. Ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, The Passing Away of Bhishmadev in Presence of Lord Krishna, Shloka 49. Om Namo Bhagavate Vāsudevāya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Pitrā cānumato rājā vāsudeva-anumoditaḥ cakāra rājyaṁ dharmeṇa pitṛ-paitāmahaṁ vibhuḥ pitrā cānumato rājā vāsudeva-anumoditaḥ cakāra rājyaṁ dharmeṇa pitṛ-paitāmahaṁ vibhuḥ. Please chant. Vaishnavas? Rājā. Dharmeṇa. Pitrā, by his uncle Dhṛtarāṣṭra, Cha, and anumataḥ, with his approval, Rājā, King Yudhiṣṭhira, vāsudeva-anumoditaḥ, confirmed by Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Cakāra, executed. Rājyaṁ, the kingdom. Dharmeṇa, in compliance with the codes of royal principles. Pitr, father. Paitāmaham, forefather. Vibhuḥ, as great as. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. After this, the great religious king Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira executed the royal power in the kingdom strictly according to the codes of royal principles approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Purport. Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira was not a mere tax collector. He was always conscious of his duty as a king, which is no less than that of a father or spiritual master. The king is to see to the welfare of the citizens from all angles of social, political, economic, and spiritual upliftment. The king must know that human life is meant for liberating the encaged soul from the bondage of material conditions. and therefore his duty is to see that the citizens are properly looked after to attain this high stage of perfection. Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira followed these principles strictly, as will be seen from the next chapter. Not only did he follow the principles, but he also got approval from his old uncle, who was experienced in political affairs, and it was also confirmed by Lord Krishna, the speaker of the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira is the ideal monarch, and the monarchy under a trained king like Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira is by far the most superior form of government, superior to modern republics or governments of the people by the people. The mass of people, especially in this age of Kali, are all born Shudras, basically low-born, ill-trained, unfortunate, and badly associated. They themselves do not know the highest perfectional aim of life. Therefore, votes cast by them actually have no value, and thus persons elected by such irresponsible votes cannot be responsible representatives like Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta Purport to the first canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Passing Away of Bhishmadev in the Presence of Lord Krishna. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu-padaya Krishna-prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini-ti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Ghoravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtadeshatarine. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dhina Bandho Jagadpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priyam. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Goratvishe Namaha. Panchatatvatmakam Krishna Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. If this is that fan who is making a noise, please just turn it off. It's highly distracting. It's okay. So this is the concluding shloka in this chapter of passing away of Bhishmadev in the presence of Lord Krishna. And I was intrigued to see if Srila Prabhupada gave any class on this particular shloka, and he did. In 1973, in June, here in Mayapur, he gave the Srimad Bhagavatam class exactly on this same shloka. So I would like to quote some of his class. It's his favorite topic: ancient government and the modern government, monarchy and democracy. So Srila Prabhupada says, so the monarchy, as soon as it becomes a personal property, meaning as soon as the king thinks the kingdom is my personal property, the king thought that the kingdom is mine, I can do whatever I like, and still the kingdom is mine, then the monarchy is a failure. As soon as the king start having this mentality, is the end of the monarchy. Then, from the whole world, the monarchy is now wiped out. But the so-called democracy is no good, because democracy means by votes. So the votes are given by the rascal Shudras. So what is the meaning of electing somebody if the vote givers are also rascals and fools, and the vote taker is a big fool, big rascal? That's all. He manages something, somehow or other, to take the votes. Somehow or other to take the votes. Therefore, you see, dacoit is going on. The government is there, And at night, you are not secure. Whole purpose of government is to protect you, but if you're not protected, then the purpose is lost. You have to take care of yourself whether dacoits are coming or not. And they are coming. So what is the meaning of this government? If the dacoits are there, rogues are there, thieves are there, miscreants are there, so what is the meaning of government? No. At the present moment, the government means that the same rogues and rascals come to become minister and take fat salary and sleep, and you take care of yourself. That is going on. So Srila Prabhupada, he was not hesitant to address the problem. It's actually very accurate, objective analysis. It's not that Srila Prabhupada is just criticizing and the society leaders are angels. It's a realistic situation. And I found one quite interesting passage from Srila Prabhupada's God brother and sannyas guru Bhakti Pragya Maharaj. He says in his book Beyond Nirvana, where he defeats the Shankaracharya's doctrine, he says, an objective observation of modern global society reveals that the symptoms of Kali Yuga are abundantly evident. It is nefarious age of deception and trickery, feint and counterfeint. Feint is when you're boxing and you kick a blow with the one hand, but actually you are just pretending. Actually you want to kick the blow with the other hand from the other side. That's a feint. And then counterfeint. So it's a feint and counterfeint, misinformation and disorganization, opportunistic politician controlled by zealous financial magnates, covertly and craftily engineer public opinion by manipulation of media. This is key sentence. Covertly and craftily engineer public opinion by manipulation of media in a relentless pursuit of ephemeral visions of illusory power rooted in the bodily concepts. And Srimad Bhagavatam also doesn't spare words of modern day Kali Yuga leadership. It says, losing their wives and property to such avaricious and merciless rulers who will behave no better than ordinary thieves, the citizens will flee to the mountains and forests. And then in another lecture on the same canto, just the previous chapter, Srila Prabhupada, he compares in contrast Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira's rule. So he says, so Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira was not that type of a king, meaning that he was not this rascal and fools type of king. Therefore, he is known as Dharmeṇa Yudhiṣṭhira, most pious king. So he was now sorry. It's a lecture on the shloka where Pandavas, Lord Krishna, Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira just came and Bhishma was lying there and he was feeling very sorry after the battle of Kurukshetra that because of him, to enthroning him, so many people had to die. So he felt genuinely remorseful. So he was now sorry. And prabodhitopi, he was trying to pacify Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira, meaning Bhishmadev. He was saying, don't be sorry. It is done for the sake of good cause for establishing dharma, samstapanartaya. So don't be sorry. But still, he could not be pacified. Shucharpita. Shucha means distress. He was so much distress within his mind that he could not be satisfied. So Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira had such a tender, soft heart that he truly empathized with the suffering of people in his kingdom. And he felt so sorry, so distressed that so many people had to die just that he could come and rule the kingdom. But actually, it was for the benefit of all. If Duryodhana continued to rule, it would be destructive to the whole kingdom. So that's the ideal king. and leader. He's teaching his subjects how to live, that they can be promoted in the next life, that they can go back to Godhead. So this is his duty, to protect them and help them to prepare for the final exam that is called death, that is awaiting all of us. And in this chapter we were witnesses of Bhishmadev's passing that final exam in the most glorious way. At the time of death, if we want to go back to Krishna, we are supposed to think of him. And it might sound simple, I'll just remember Krishna somehow or other, and I'll go back to Krishna, but it is not that easy and it's not that simple. I heard quite a few stories of devotees who were drowning in Ganga here in Mayapur, but somehow or other they were saved. And then later they would recall their experience. And guess what? Each one of them, at least 3 I heard, they said, I didn't remember Krishna. I just thought how to save myself. Another said, I was remembering some advertisement for washing powder. Another one was remembering his family. But none of them remembered Krishna. And they were not new devotees. They were devotees for many years who practiced seriously. But still, they didn't remember Krishna because it's not that easy. And we know Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Anti khali chamam eva smara muktva kalevaram. So if somehow or other at the end of life, you remember Krishna, but if we look at the shloka scrutinizingly, it says chamam eva. This word eva is very significant. Eva means only, or Srila Prabhupada translates it's if one remembers me alone. Me alone, you remember only Krishna at that time, not Krishna and your wife, not Krishna and your family, Krishna and your bank account, because so many thoughts will be passing through your mind. And Krishna might be just one of the thoughts, but not that kind of remembrance. We have to be basically absorbing Krishna at the time of death. Then we go back to Krishna. This is the real meaning of that verse, how one goes back to spiritual world. And it's a scientific process, as Srila Prabhupada used to say. To remember Krishna, it takes practice, and that practice or sadhana is a scientific process. Srila Prabhupada would many times say, don't take this Krishna consciousness movement as some sentimental religious propaganda or dogma. It is very scientific. So what does this scientific mean? Scientific means that you have some formula. In chemistry, if you mix substance A, substance B, under controlled conditions, you're supposed to get exactly one substance C. You cannot get whatever. You have to get the exact thing. So we need to know what is the substance or the result or the goal we want to get from our practice. Sanatana Goswami in Hari Bhakti Vilas, he gives that analogy when he gives, when he explains Diksha, initiation. He says, if the bell metal can turn into gold when it's mixed with mercury in a chemical process. So similarly, in the process of Diksha, initiation, one can become a Vaishnava to this process of Diksha. So you have to mix this bell metal and mercury, but nobody nowadays knows in which proportions, under which conditions, so that's why nobody is making gold in chemical processes. But that knowledge is required to get the real thing, to get the gold, or to get the goal of our spiritual practice. So our sadhana is supposed to bring certain result, otherwise it's meaningless. I mean, we are following so many rules, and sometimes it might be quite hard work. You're getting up very early in the morning, you're taking bath, you're going for Mangarati, you're chanting your rounds. So many rules and regulations are there. And year after year we are doing this, and after so much hard work, we don't get the intended result. then what was the use? It was just hard labor. So we need to know what that result is. We need to know what the goal is. Otherwise, we are just going through some motions, through some mechanical activities, and that serve no purpose. And somehow it becomes quite common that we forget the goal and we just follow because we are used on it. When we joined, they taught us, temple Bhakta program leader, he taught us, oh, you should do like this, you should do like this, and we are just doing it after so many years without even thinking why we are doing it, what is the purpose behind this. So in other words, we need to know not only the sadhana, but the sadhya, goal of our sadhana bhakti. So what is that goal? In Chaitanya Charitamrita in Madhya Lila, chapter 19, shloka 177, where Lord Chaitanya is teaching Srila Rupa Goswami. He says, sadhana bhakti hoite hoi ratira udoy, rati gada hoile tar prema nama koi. By regularly rendering devotional service, one gradually becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When that attachment is intensified, it becomes love of Godhead. So sadhana bhakti, by this process of sadhana bhakti, a rati or bhava arises. A ratira udoy. And then when this rati becomes thick, when intensifies, when it thickens, then it's called prema or love of God. And this is our goal. The goal of sadhana bhakti is bhava bhakti or rati. And goal of bhava is prema bhakti. And further in Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, he elaborates more on the process of sadhana bhakti. He says, kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava sasada nadibida nitya sidasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. So he defines the sadhana bhakti. He says, action of the senses which produce the stage of bhava is called sadhana bhakti. So we are engaging our present senses, and then this engagement is producing stage of bhava or rati. This attained state of bhava bhakti, sadhyata, is eternal sthāyi bhava, it's nitya siddha, it's eternally established in the heart, which is not created but simply manifests within the soul by the spiritual energy of the Lord. So we established that goal of our sadhana is attainment of bhava. And that bhava has some symptoms, some lakshana. So what are some of the symptoms of rati? It's tenderness or softness of the heart. Bhava has that property that it softens the heart. Usually the heart of materialists is very hard due to indulgence in sense gratification. But when by engaging in the process of bhakti, he attains the stage of bhava, his heart melts, becomes very tender and very soft. But if one engages in other processes like jnana and vairagya, the heart doesn't become soft. Quite opposite. It becomes very harsh, because the nature of these processes of jnana and vairagya, that they are very harsh and austere, and they make the heart very hard. So only bhakti softens the heart. So further, Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, when the tenderness of the heart is manifested, we should understand that there is a rati or attachment. But of course, if you sometimes notice somebody has a soft heart, doesn't mean necessarily that he attained bhava. It could be just external symptom. So it has to be judged properly. Those who are interested in being liberated from material bondage will not manifest this tenderness. If the softness of the heart, the symptom of rati, becomes clearly visible in persons desiring liberation, like in jnanis or other unqualified people, then this is not real rati. So in conclusion, our practice, our sadhana, is supposed to bring us to the stage of bhava, which will soften our heart, make it tender and open for love or prema to enter into it. So the love of God is the most elevated emotion, spiritual emotion. And of course we have material emotions and spiritual emotions as well. So material emotions, they're pertaining to material body and mind, while the spiritual pertaining to the soul and the Lord. And there are different gradations of these material emotions, for example. There are very gross material emotions like that come from a gross sense indulgence. Kama, krodha, lobha, moda, maha, and matsarya. And all these emotions are very degrading and destructive. They make the heart very hard. They contract the heart. And they are destructive on levels, even on a physical level. If you're very angry, some hormones are secreted and your blood pressure and heart rate increases. It's a harmful even on a physical level. What to speak about on a more subtle and a spiritual level, how harmful these material emotions are. So this is one of the most damaging effects of gross sense indulgence, that they harden the heart. And usually those who are very much attached to sense gratification, they are ready to do anything. They are ready to kill, hardcore criminals. They will kill 400 rupees or whatever. Their heart is so hardened that they have no compassion or empathy with anybody. And then we have other material emotions that are more subtle, that are arising more from the mode of goodness, that are more uplifting, like gratitude, generosity, compassion, humility, mother's love. Sometimes it's said that the mother's heart is very soft and tender and she easily cries. But these are still material emotions, but just comparatively, they are better than the gross material emotions. So our sadhana engagement in sadhana bhakti is supposed to purify the heart from both gross material emotions and subtle material emotions and render it soft and tender so that bhava and prema can enter into it, that they can manifest in it. So love of God, this is the most exalted emotion, and one who has it, he forgets everything else. He becomes completely disinterested and detached from everything else. So only in bhakti we see such high levels of renunciation as, for example, Raghunath Das Goswami, our Prayojanacharya, manifested that he didn't care what he ate, where he slept, how much he slept. He didn't care. He genuinely didn't have any care for the material body. He was firmly established on a spiritual platform because the love of God was always present in his heart. So rati and prema, they expand the consciousness to the previously unknown limits. So what happens if we are doing our sadhana for many years and then somehow our heart doesn't soften? Our consciousness doesn't become purified. We are still very angry at times, very harsh, very frustrated, although we are following all rules and regulations very strictly. But as soon as there is a slight provocation, we react very angrily. This is a clear sign that the heart is still very hard. And that is also a sign that we are doing something wrong, that we are not applying the process properly, because heart doesn't soften. So what could be the reason? Of course, offenses always come first in the mind, but this time I would like to focus on something else, providing that offenses are taken care, that we are trying hard to avoid all the offenses in the chanting of the holy name. So there are 6 things in Upadeshamrita, in the second shloka, Rupa Goswami defines 6 that destroy bhakti. Atyaharam paryasrascha prajalpaniya magraha janasanga chalaulamcha shabdir bhaktir vinashyati. So these 6 things destroy bhakti. And one particular thing that I would like to focus now here, not all of 6, is this niyama agraha. Niyama means rules or regulations, and graha means to grasp, to take, to seize. In Jyotish we call a planet graha because that planet has the ability to grasp a person, to have him experience his own karma. So it's something very forceful, grasping. So there are two possibilities. Adgraha means not to follow rules and regulations, to let them, niyama agraha, with the long A, means you neglect the rules and regulations, you don't follow them. And this is obvious, that then you don't make any advancements because you're not following the rules and regulations. But it is less obvious in the opposite case. You follow all the rules and the regulations, but you don't follow them in a proper way, in a proper mood. Niyama graha. You are grasping to the rules or the regulations and follow them just for the sake of the following. In other words, you follow them mechanically without knowing why you are following them. You are performing some rituals, some actions, without even thinking why you are doing this. So in different religions we hear, and there are even nowadays many fanatics who think that only my religion is the right one, and they have intense grasping to these rules of that particular religion that sometimes they're ready to kill for it. There are suicide bombers who think, oh, I'm doing this for God. It's God's order that I kill 100 people. And this is all coming from improper following and comprehension of the rules and regulations. And quite often the faith in these rules and regulations is induced by society, by social pressure. It's not a real, mature, realized faith, but it's coming from the environment, and person doesn't know how to properly integrate it in his own life, but just accepts it blindly or out of fear that he'll go to hell. I follow the rule, or maybe because I want to be part of a certain social group, and only if I follow these rules I can be accepted as the member of that particular group. I go for Manga Arati because I need to tick the sadhana sheet or whatever. All sort of improper motivations are there in following the rules that we can fall trap in. In Chaitanya Charitamrita we find one example when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Varanasi and he was preaching to Mayavadis there. At one point he spoke about Shankaracharya's interpretation of his Vedanta Sutra, and he proved how wrong that was. And then Madhya they were struck with wonder, and they replied, quote, all the Madhya sannyasis said, Your Holiness, kindly know from us that we actually have no quarrel with your refutation of these meanings, for you have given clear understanding of the sutras. We know that all this world jugglery springs from the imagination of Shankaracharya, and yet, because we belong to his sect, we accept it, although it does not satisfy us. So they're saying, we know that his interpretations are illogical, not very good, but because we belong to this Shankara Sampradaya, somehow we accept it. So basically they are blindly accepting it, just because of the belonging to the particular group. Also sometimes this faith comes from putting all our, this blind faith, from putting all our trust in one charismatic person that we think knows the truth, Messiah or incarnation. in the 1960s and 70s, in Srila Prabhupada's time in America, there was one cult leader called Jim Jones, who promised his leaders some utopia in jungles of South America. The whole community, he had a big following because he was a very charismatic preacher. So at one point, all community, they moved to the jungles of South America, and he proclaimed himself as a Messiah. And ultimately, he led his followers into mass suicide. 900 people took poison, cyanide, voluntarily drank it, and died. So this is called blind following. So if one man has the ability to brainwash 900 people in committing suicide, then you can imagine somebody who has much more facility, much more money than him, who has all education system, all media, how many more people he can brainwash. So we need some power of discrimination, which is nowadays in Kali Yuga rarely found. Most people are just gullible and prone to be misled, easily deceived and tricked, and persuaded to believe into something that is just not true. And in this way they are exploited by the persons with the low characters that abandon in Kali Yuga. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, in his Upakhyan Upadesh, he gives one instructive story illustrating this point. Every morning, some brahmanas living at the banks of Ganga, they used to go to take bath and perform their rituals there, and they had their copper pots with them. But somehow during performing these rituals and taking bath, all these pots would get mixed up and everybody would end up taking somebody else's pot. So this elderly brahmana, he thought, okay, I will stop this by marking my pot with a lump of mud. So he took lump of sand, lump of mud, and stuck it on his copper vessel, and then he went into the Ganga to take bath. And then these other brahmanas who had respect for this brahman, they saw that he's doing this, and they thought, wow, this must be some special ritual. Let us all do the same. So they all stuck the lump of mud on their own pots. So when the elderly brahman later came out, he saw that all the pots were also had a lump of mud, and he couldn't recognize his own. And then he realized how over-attached to the rituals these fellows, these brahmanas were, without realizing even the real purpose of anything. They just imitate others and perform some rituals blindly following. And this is the same logic that there is a Sanskrit term basically meaning a logic of herd of sheep. Sheep, they are all happy even to go together, even if they are led to the slaughterhouse, because they don't know anything else. They think, oh, everybody else is going, I'm also going. Another example, when Lord Chaitanya was in Vrindavan, he met many people coming from Akrura Tirtha, from a ghat where Akrura saw Krishna and Balaram, where they stopped when they were going to Mathura. And Lord Chaitanya asked him, so what is happening? They said, we saw Krishna. He's dancing on the hoods of Kalia in the Yamuna. We are so fortunate. And Lord Chaitanya just laughed and said, yes, you are correct. So in the next few days, throngs of people were going there, so-called seeing Krishna, coming back, and some of them would come and report to Lord Chaitanya that they saw Krishna dancing on the heads of Kalia, and the Kalia had blazing diamonds blazing on his heads. And at one point, Balabhadra Bhattacharya, who was Lord's associate at that trip, he asked Lord Chaitanya, please give me permission to go and see Krishna directly. Hearing him, Lord Chaitanya slapped him. He told him, you are learned Pandit. but you became such a fool under the influence of the words of foolish people. Just sit here and wait. Next day you will see Krishna. So the next day a gentleman came and Lord Chaitanya asked him, have you seen Krishna? He told him, yes, I'm seeing Krishna now, but all these foolish people who are thinking that they are seeing Krishna, what is actually happening during the night, a fisherman, he has a boat and he has a torch, so he is moving on the boat and people think that that he's a Krishna who is dancing, and of his torch they think it's a diamond blazing on the hoods of Kaliya. So they're just foolish people. But actually you are the Krishna, I'm seeing you now. So people, they all seen Krishna but they didn't know where the Krishna is. They mistaken something false to be Krishna. And this is just another example how blind following can lead one into a complete illusion. So how to find a balance between these blind, mindless followings of rules and regulations without getting any tangible result? And another extreme, not following. Again, if you give up everything and don't follow anything, then how can you expect to gain anything? So there must be some way how to follow rules and regulations properly. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he tackles this very nicely in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita. He says that it is necessary to maintain the body by following the rules of varnashrama. The devotee never allows those rules to overpower his devotion of the Lord. He speaks here particularly about the rules of varnashrama, but same applies with the rules of sadhana bhakti. Those rules always remain as followers, means subservient to the cultivation of the Lord, means to the devotional service. And then he says, on the path of gradual development, the person must take care to elevate himself to a higher level, no matter on which level he is situated. So wherever we are, we must take care to make a progress, to go to the next level. Otherwise, if I'm for ages stuck on this present level where I am now, whatever it is, it serves no purpose. Must take care to elevate himself to a higher level. A person, but how? There is a way how you do it. A person should be firmly fixed in his present position in order to take a firm step forward. So firmly fix yourself at the present level. Then, in order to advance to a higher level, when one foot gives up the previous place, that foot must fix itself firmly in the higher place before the other foot can raise itself to the same level. Simultaneously, the person must give up the lower level and establish himself firmly in a higher level. If he moves too quickly, he will fall. If he moves too slowly, the result will also come slowly. So it should be proper pace. Similarly, when you try to ride a bicycle, if you try to ride it very, very slow, you will lose the balance, you will fall. Or if you ride it very fast, again, you might fall. So we need to know what is appropriate for our present level of advancement. In the 70s, I think there was a devotee here who wanted to chant 3 lakhs a day, so he built himself a hut, and devotees would bring him prasadam once a day, and he would chant. And it lasted for some days, and then he packed himself and went back to America, because he was placing himself at a higher place than his present position. So you should not imitate. But also, we should not be eternally stuck at the neophyte beginner's level. When somebody just joins, they tell him, oh, you just start by chanting 1 round. So if I think, okay, I was told to chant 1 round till end of my life, I'll chant this 1 round. This will lead to nowhere. In this way, we will need many, many lifetimes. So we need to gradually go to the higher stage at the proper time. when Haridas Thakur was on his deathbed in the presence of Lord Chaitanya asked him, "What is your problem, my dear Haridas?" And Haridas said, "I cannot finish my rounds." He was shedding 3 lakhs, 300,000 names daily, and he could not finish them because of his sickness. And Lord Chaitanya, and he thought this is very important. Although he was already liberated, Lord Chaitanya told him, "You're already liberated. You don't need to follow these rules so strictly." So Haridas Thakur, he was not actually attached to a certain number of rounds, but just he wanted to show that rules are important for those who are in sadhana bhakti. But again, they should not be followed mechanically without realizing one's present position and blindly, because this is an obstacle. We need to know when to apply which rule. Another example, when Govinda was supposed to enter into Gambhira to massage Lord Chaitanya, who fell asleep. He couldn't enter because Lord Chaitanya was lying on a door, and so he had to cover him with his cloth and step over his body inside, which is generally considered offense. So he broke the rule in order to serve the Lord. But then when he had to go back, he didn't do it. He didn't break the rule. And when Lord Chaitanya asked him, "Why are you lying here?" when he woke up, he didn't say it, but in his mind he thought, for your sake, for your service, I can break any rules, but I'm very much afraid to break the rule for my own sake. So he had a proper discrimination to discriminate which rule should be followed when. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he further makes a point in Chaitanya Shikshamrita. By progressing from tribal life, civilized life with materially conceived God, moral life with acceptance of God, to devotional lives in practice or sadhana bhakti, step by step, the living entity can achieve the highest end, prema. If he hurries too quickly to progress to one step, he'll fall to the lower step. If he delays too long on one step, he'll become lazy and block his own progress. Understanding that both excessively quick and slow movement is an obstacle, a person should elevate himself gradually by fixing himself firmly on one level and then giving up when he has attained firmness in the next level. Many devotees on the level of Vaidhi Bhakti make no attempt to progress to Bhava Bhakti and lament that they have not attained Bhava. So we can say, my life is useless, I have not attained Bhava, but I really never made any effort. So what is the use of this lamentation? Many people remain attached to the rules of Varnashrama and are indifferent to Bhava and Prema. This is an obstacle to their own advancement. But those who are very fortunate to receive the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, however, can progress very quickly. In a short lifespan, a person can easily progress from Narashrama to the highest level of Prema. Those who have taken shelter of rules of gradual development do not have to wait for another birth to elevate themselves. So in this very same lifetime, as Srila Prabhupada told us, we can achieve the highest goal. It's not that we have to wait for 10 lifetimes, although in general it happens that this process we drag on for many lifetimes just because we don't put enough effort and we don't follow properly. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible. It's possible for everybody. So however, those who act like a dead fish and simply float on the currents of fate in the ocean of material existence, advancing and retreating with the ebb and flow of the tide, can hardly attain the desired goal. So this is another example, interesting analogy. Float like a dead fish. Basically, whatever comes, you just, you don't put any effort yourself. You just float and wait that you are carried back to Godhead. But it doesn't work like this. You need to be alive and swim. Then you can attain the goal. So I think I'll quickly end. I just want to summarize what I wanted to say in this class, that First is that we should know the goal of our practice. We should know the sadhya while we're performing the sadhana. Second thing, that we should not be blindly attached to the rules and regulations, but follow them with proper understanding, which is appropriate to our level of advancement. Also, we should not be a sheep and follow blindly, and also we shouldn't be a dead fish and just float on a river. And we should establish ourselves firmly at one level and then strive to reach next level. And then when we are firmly fixed at that next level, abandon the previous level. If we follow these simple rules given by our acharyas, we can be assured that even in this lifetime we can achieve the prema, the highest goal of life. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you very much. If you have any questions. Yes, Prabhu. How he could put faith in Dhṛtarāṣṭra. I'm not sure that he really put a faith in Dhṛtarāṣṭra, but he had a respect as his elder uncle, and it's a Vedic culture that you respect your elders. So, and he didn't want to push himself and overthrow his elders. Only when it was clearly Krishna's will, he acted like that. Yeah, I'm not sure if I really understood your question, but this is what comes to my mind. Yes, Prabhu. Please take a mic. I cannot hear.
Thank you.
Just a moment. You meant to say that maybe Yudhiṣṭhira Maharaj blindly followed Dhṛtarāṣṭra in that sense that he put a faith in Dhṛtarāṣṭra. No, he didn't really put a faith in Dhṛtarāṣṭra, but he had a respect for him and he honored him as his uncle, although he was not really favorably disposed. But that was not a blind following, definitely. Yes, Prabhu, sorry.
Hare Krishna. No, it's all right. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for nicely explaining this verse. Your Grace mentioned that regarding Niyamagraha and gave some examples like Govinda stepping over Balbhadra Bhattacharya. So what understanding I got that while following the rules, we should first consider like what is favorable for devotional service at that time, like bhakti anukula matra karjira sita. So is this understanding correct? Like,
yes, correct. Anukul. What is anukul? Favorable at that time for devotional service.
we should do that.
Yeah, this is the highest consideration.
And sometimes like we make some rules for our spiritual advancement. We become a little strict, like I will eat only when I complete my rounds, breakfast. So like how much we should
make hard and fast rules. Yeah, now it's Chaturmasya, so some people are taking vows, Chaturmasya, only eating only Ekadashi, or eating this or eating that. We should see what we can follow easily and naturally. Otherwise, if you take too many rules, sooner or later you're going to give them up, and then it will serve no purpose. So what is easily achievable and possible for us at that moment? Maybe not easily, but realistically. Realistically is the better way. For example, how many rounds we chant? 16 is the minimum. But if one says, oh, I vowed to chant maximum 16, I will never increase it, this is again a wrong understanding. 16 is the minimum. We didn't vow to chant maximum 16. So at certain point, one might desire to chant more, and then he should chant more. But how many depends on his particular situation and his capacity also, his level of advancement. So it requires some discrimination. If we don't have it ourselves, maybe we can approach somebody who is helping us in a spiritual life, and he can give us idea what is appropriate us, what is not. It is okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mataji had there.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, in Russia, we had a really, really popular TV program.
So
And
can you say again?
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Better.
Okay. So in Russia, we have a very, very famous TV program. And a gentleman from the, you call them decoders, people who are feeling that we are brainwashed into the sect. He has read a passage from Chaitanya Charitamrita about Lord Chaitanya having an ecstatic symptoms, one by one, that he had foam at his mouth, that he was falling down hard, he was screaming the Lord's name, he was breaking all his bones, his teeth were shattering, that passage. And he implied that these people don't understand what they're asking for. This is your goal. And he read all those symptoms and he said, are you clear? Are you actually clear what you're asking for? And he used this logic which you use today, know your purpose, against us. So what would you tell the devotees whom you tell to reach prema? The ecstatic symptoms of prema which he read are actual. What would you tell them?
Yeah, the ecstatic symptoms of prema externally, they look like some madness, like some, disease. You got schizophrenia or whatever disease is. But this is materialistic vision, completely materialistic vision. And we are not materialists. This is what gross materialist who doesn't believe in the soul and the God sees. He just sees something externally and he takes it for granted. There are also sahajiyas who imitate these symptoms, but again, behind these symptoms is just imitation, nothing is there. What is more important is the state of consciousness, not the external manifestation of the symptoms. And this state of the consciousness could be to some, it's impossible to grasp for those who are materialists. They cannot understand the activities of devotees. It's completely bewildering, and Krishna intentionally covers the intelligence. But devotees who have faith and who have themselves experienced some spiritual feelings can verify that this is not some religious sentimentalism, that there is a real religious experience behind such external manifestations. And not only in our path of bhakti and other genuine religions. There is one famous book called A Variety of Religious Experience, written by a scholar who studied religious experiences of followers of different religions, and he found that there is definitely something behind it, but external observers cannot perceive it. They have to be the one who is participating in these two experiences. In other words, you have to be a practitioner in order to experience this religious experience. And only faith that is based on your own experience is real, mature faith. Otherwise, if your faith always depends on something, on somebody else's experience or somebody else preaching, this is only theoretical faith. You believe that that person has seen the truth, and you follow, and this is sort of blind following. You follow, but you don't have any experience yourself, and you cannot verify it. So tomorrow something happens, and that person that you had faith leaves or commits some activity that is not exemplary, you lose whole faith and you leave the process. So that's why our own practice has to give experience, tangible experience for ourselves that we ourselves can verify. We have to verify for ourselves that Krishna exists, that this process works. Only then our faith will be a real, mature faith. And of course, Shastriya Shraddha, we have to have faith in Shastra, but that mature faith has to be backed up by personal experience through practice. That's why all these mundane scholars, Indologists, Sanskritologists, many of them, they know the Shastra much better than us. But because they don't practice, they cannot perceive the essence of it. They are just looking it from outside, like a licking bottle of honey from outside. They're not tasting it because they're not practicing it. So they're just judging by using their material intelligence and logic. So it's not the proper way to gain faith, to experience anything. We need to practice in order to get experience. And only when we get experience, our faith will be strengthened and matured. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for a nice class. You spoke quite a bit on material emotions and spiritual emotions. I have a question and a comment. The question is, you said we have gross material emotions and subtle material emotions. I was thinking the emotions are on the subtle platform. So I just want to understand this a little bit. And my comment is, many times we fail to check our emotions, whether they are on the material platform or spiritual platform. Because the spiritual emotions are devotional emotions. They are for Krishna exclusively. So we can always check if Krishna is present in our emotions. And if, of course, at that level, we are very much advanced in devotional service. But the minimum we can do is we can check them against Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. And Srila Prabhupada has talked extensively on every topic that relates to us. So it's very simple. We just check with the base to see what is Prabhupada's opinion on this. Because many times we are on we can get to the mode of goodness and we are just arguing that, I'm correct and my emotions are right and my thoughts are correct, but we fail to check against what is Acharya's opinion. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, thank you, correct. Yeah, we should always check with Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Otherwise, just following our sentimental emotions might mislead us. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.